Eric was just a wonderful, delightful, good human being. You know, from the time he was little, he was very compassionate and understanding, wise beyond his years.
He was more quiet. You know, he didn't need to be the center of attention. He was very confident. He knew of his own abilities, although he wouldn't make other people know that. He didn't believe in a lot of limits, you know. He always thought, you know, if you wanted to do something, you could do it. He had a couple of close friends, and he had a lot of acquaintances. And he had a very close relationship with his girlfriend, Holly. They had been together for a couple of years, and he had kind of found his true love.
I met Eric in freshman year. We had geography together. The way he was with me and the way he was with other people, you couldn't help but not realize how kind he was. We sort of had this understanding that we didn't know what was going to happen because, you know, we were 19 years old. But we both knew we wanted to end up together.
Eric had just finished his first year at Berkeley, majoring in molecular biology. And, you know, we had been spending time together as a family since Eric had come home for this summer, and he just seemed energized.
We got up and we decided we'd take a hike as a family. Eric and I and Eileen went for a hike out in the Orchid Hills for a couple hours, and Eileen was thinking about buying a new car, so after the hiking we went and went shopping for a car. And
we had a good afternoon together, and after we looked at a car, we came home and had pizza. The three of us ate together.
He and I talked about, well, let's go for a bike ride together tomorrow. And we were going to ride out to Guadalupe in the morning before the winds got going and have breakfast and then ride back. And at the last minute, he decided he would go for a ride alone.
We talked on Skype a little bit. He was telling me he was going for a bike ride before he was going to come to my house. So he said he'd be done in an hour, and then he'd call me, and then we said goodbye.
A half hour later, someone said they found his cell phone. They said the battery's dying, we're going to take it to the police station. You know, normally I don't worry about my kids when they're gone because they're very capable, but we got in the car and we went to go look for him.
If he had dropped his phone somewhere, then, you know, he wouldn't be able to call if, you know, if he'd had an accident or a flat tire or something. We somehow heard, because Holly was out looking for Eric as well, that there had been an accident on Telephone Road. So we went there, and it was all kinds of police cars parked around, and, you know, lights were still flashing.
I called Eileen, but she said she was going to call back. I called again, and she didn't answer. And then, you know, I was just trying to be patient, which was impossible.
As we drove up, we told them who we were, and they said yes, it was a cyclist, and yes, that there was a fatality.
So they brought out the bike bag he had underneath his bike, and I'd given him $20 to kind of keep in his bike bag in case, you know, he broke down somewhere, he could need a cab. And the bike bag had $20, and so we knew that that was Eric.
I called her again, and she said that the person on the scene said that they took him straight to the sheriff's department. And I asked what that meant, and she said that they don't take you to the hospital when you die.
And we didn't see him for 3 or 4 days after that when he was cold. It was horrible to see him like that. And now all the magic's gone from our lives. I used to get up and I loved every day, even if there were challenges. And now it's just a labor to live.
It's a sense of disbelief. It's so hard to comprehend that he was gone, he was killed.
Initially, it was presented that it was an unavoidable accident, that, couldn't avoid him and hit him and he died. But subsequently, we found that it wasn't the circumstances whatsoever, that it was a clear day, there was no fog, there was no obstructions. Eric was riding on the right side of the road where he should have been. There's not a bike lane there. It's not a real wide road, but there's enough room for a car to pass a bicyclist without hitting them. There was a little bit of a hill. He had just come over the top of the hill. On weekdays, there can be a little traffic there because there's a packing plant there, but on weekends, there's not much traffic there at all. And this driver lives on that road, so she knows that there's always cyclists there. It's a county-designated bicycle route. She was riding to the right side of her lane, because if she had been right in the middle of the lane, she wouldn't have hit him, even if she didn't see him. So she had drifted to the right side of the road, and she hit him with the right side of her car, head on. She didn't see him until she impacted him, so she didn't have a chance to swerve. She didn't have a chance to put on the brake. She might have taken her foot off the accelerator, but we don't know that. And so when she hit him, she threw his body 140 feet in the air, knocked his helmet off, but it wouldn't have mattered because his neck was broken. And then after she hit him, she didn't call 911. She didn't go and attend to him and hold him, so that in his last breath he could see a human face, and she didn't comfort him. He died alone, by himself. Some passerby came by shortly afterwards, and then they called 911 when they got there. So just like she was preoccupied with whatever her thoughts were before she killed him, she remained preoccupied. I mean, the law requires that if you injure someone, you call 911, that you try to offer assistance. But she had probably flipped out. The road was unobstructed. She had at least 550 feet of clear, unobstructed vision. And when you account for the fact that he was moving away from her when he was cycling, when we've gone and reenacted the accident, he was visible for the entire 45 seconds she was on Telephone Road. There was never a moment where she wouldn't have seen him if she'd been looking at the road. So clearly this was a case of driver distraction. Although she denied any distraction, it was found that there was texting activity both incoming and outgoing. That certainly explains her distraction. Could she have been texting and using her iPod or doing something else? I don't know. All I know that she was a very distracted driver traveling 60 miles an hour for tens of seconds not looking at the road. And whether it was texting or some other distraction, that doesn't really matter. It's just, it was a very avoidable collision. It wasn't an accident. It was a case of distraction that had a fatality.
I'm just so outraged that he was needlessly and brutally killed.
I feel like when people say that he's in a better place, or God had some reason for this, it's making light of the fact that some girl hit him with her truck and he died. I don't think you can forget about that by trying to make yourself feel better.
This is something that is pervasive. People are all the time driving their vehicles mindlessly. They're all the time driving their vehicles distracted. I saw a guy who was driving down the freeway with a laptop on his dashboard, fixed onto it, and he was computing while he was driving. And then I saw another young driver reach down to get something on the freeway on the passenger side, and his head was below the windshield for 5 seconds. He was going 65 miles an hour. So whether you have laws against distracted driving or not, I think that our culture encourages it. The driver who killed Eric clearly had no intention of hurting him. I mean, she was a teenager who was going out for the evening, and her mind was preoccupied with her day's activities. It can happen to you. It can happen to one of your loved ones. It can happen to you yourself, where you're the distracted driver who kills someone. And if you can become more mindful of that, it is so important to not be this victim or to be this criminal who kills someone. You know, the average kid, teenager now, texts 80 times a day, 80 times. It's becoming just part of their nature to use a handheld and to text, and I think that's okay. You know, I mean, communication changes, but I think we need to really get it out of the automobiles, to be mindful about how they drive and how they endanger other people. I think that it takes a long time for the reality of Eric's death to really become real. You know, I think in the back of my mind still there's this fantasy that it can still be okay somehow. You know, if I just keep doing the right thing, there's no good you can get out of this.
It doesn't give me any solace to talk about distracted driving, and I don't feel any better, but I feel I have an obligation. Eric lost his life for this message. It's a huge message.
Someone was careless, someone was reckless. Eric died because of it, but there's nothing that we can gain out of it except for to try to endure it and accept it and to keep living.
A few seconds almost a year ago is the reason that all of us are so sad. So I think if people were to put things into perspective more, just realize that your actions go further than just the consequences in your own life. Something that could have been avoided, and Eric would be here.